U.S. Modernist Radio is part of DesignNetwork.org, exclusive architecture and design podcasts reaching creative listeners worldwide.
Hi, I'm Anders Holst, the host of Art Insiders New York, and you're listening to U.S. Modernist Radio.
Mama don't allow no architecture around here. Mama don't allow no architecture around here. Oh, I don't care what Mama don't allow, gonna draw mine modern anyhow. Mama don't allow no architecture around here.
Welcome to U.S. Modernist Radio, where we talk and laugh with people who enjoy, own, create, dream about, preserve, love, and hate modernist architecture, the most exciting and controversial buildings in the world. Every town hopes that someone will come along and at no expense to the town, create something beautiful. We're not talking about a new mall, we're talking acres of flowing grounds, a world-class architecture firm creating an award-winning complex of stunningly beautiful buildings open to the public, one with a philanthropic mission that includes, among other noteworthy causes, the elimination of slave labor in the construction supply chain. Well, one person did just that in the modernist mecca of New Canaan, Connecticut, notable for houses by Philip Johnson, Eliot Noyes, John Johansen, Frank Lloyd Wright, Edward Durell Stone, among others. What did our heroine get in return for this amazing project? A cranky town government and crankier neighbors who apparently are into lawsuits. Joining us is Sharon Prince, CEO and founder of Grace Farms in New Canaan, Connecticut. Later on, we'll have some jazz with musical guest Lily Frost. And now, back from sunny Palm Springs, California, and by sunny we mean 105 degrees, it's desert heat, your host, George Smart.
Thanks, Tom. Due to COVID, U.S. Modernists didn't rev up our usual huge presence in Palm Springs for Modernism Week this year. We're going to be back, though, in February 2022 with the opening of the swanky U.S. Modernist compound and our wildly popular schedule of Modernism Week tours, parties, and events. You can sign up to go with us starting in June at usmodernist.org/tours. Last May, though, I had the privilege of going out and attending the kickoff for a new exhibit at the Palm Springs Museum of Art that's going to be planned for later this year. We hope to bring you a few interviews from that visit in the coming weeks. If you've ever toured Palm Springs architecture, it's likely that the name Albert Frey came up. He's one of the most important figures in modernism, and one of the few Americans who ever worked for the great Le Corbusier. The Palm Springs Art Museum starts an extended exhibition of his life and work in the fall, including the recently reconstructed Illuminaire demonstration house from the 1930s, and of course one of my favorite houses in the world, the Frey House 2 in the hills right above the Art Museum. You can keep up with the event at the museum's website, psmuseum.org. U.S. Modernist Radio is underwritten by Wendy Robineau and Don Beskin, and by Modernist realtor Angela Roll.
In the Atlantic Ocean near Boston, a fishing boat rescues a raft containing a woman in a red cocktail dress, a DeWalt toolkit, and an old iPhone 4, still working but wiped clean. The woman has no memory of who she is, but the ship's doctor finds a tattoo on her ankle with the address of an In-N-Out burger and the words triple-double animal-style Dostoevsky. When the ship docks, she drives cross-country to Thousand Palms just outside sunny Palm Springs, California. Relying on her undergraduate degree in Russian literature, she knew, like we all do at some level, that Fyodor Dostoevsky's profound examinations of the human soul would be the key to finding the most satisfying burger on the secret menu. To her shock, the In-N-Out burger is closed, but she grabs her trusty heavy-duty DeWalt drill and breaks in. Steel doors fall down behind her. Unusual for an In-N-Out, but hey, it's our story. Then the iPhone rings. Someone says,
"Hello, Angela Roll."
Will she escape to one day rent scooters on Mykonos? Tune in next time for more of The Roll Identity. Meanwhile, memory restored, modernist realtor Angela Roll specializes in modernist houses, advising buyers and sellers on everything from appropriate renovation to whether Pushkin or Chekhov would win a rap battle. Reach her at angelaroll.com, that's ROEHL, or 919-995-0550. Oh, no worries, that In-N-Out burger in Thousand Palms is still very much open. Sharon Prince is the CEO and founder of Grace Farms Foundation, which opened Grace Farms in New Canaan in 2015. Initially a place of ecumenical worship, Grace Farms has widened its mission to win awards for contributions to architecture, environmental sustainability, and social good, including the AIA National 2017 Architecture Honor Award, the AIA New York's 2019 Visionary Award, Fast Company's 2016 Innovation by Design Award for Social Good, and the Mies Crown Hall America's Prize from the Illinois Institute of Technology. Grace Farms sits on 80 acres of preserved land made publicly accessible and free to all, including the river building designed by the Pritzker Prize-winning firm of Sana. Sharon has fought for disrupting contemporary slavery and violence against women on a local and global scale. With the late Bill Minking, who was a great friend of U.S. Modernist, Sharon launched Design for Freedom, a groundbreaking movement to remove slavery from the construction supply chain. Welcome, Sharon.
Well, hello.
So, Sharon, before we start talking about Grace Farms, for years you ran an Icelandic outerwear clothing brand. And before that, you were in Tulsa. So how does one jump from Tulsa to Reykjavik to New Canaan?
It's a good question.
Well, I'd say the common denominator and what continues is an entrepreneurial thread. I was in business school back in 30 years ago or so, and one of the first entrepreneurial studies department in Tulsa, and is also fortuitously with Dr. Robert Hisrick, who was a forerunner really starting to really be able to bring scholarship around women entrepreneurs. And so I caught the bug. Really intended to start off on pursuing entrepreneurial ventures right away, and eventually led to, I guess it was really for the 66 Degree North. It's a combination of seeing, really the experiential part of it in Iceland, along with the ability to start to launch a Arctic-born, very, it's actually at that time back in the early 2000s, like 2003, it was fit for women as well as Icelandic rescue team members. And it just afforded this opportunity to be at that intersection of community, culture, and commerce. I was like an adopted citizen of Iceland. Have you been to Iceland?
Yeah, I've been a couple times.
Have you seen 66 Degree North there?
I haven't seen it.
Oh, it's the mother brand. It was a Arctic-born brand, and actually there is a connection between 66 Degree North and Grace Farms. Grace Farms would never been built without 66 Degree North, because there was an architect friend of mine who was my strategic partner and was helping me to open a Soho pop-up store and some other trade shows, for the outdoor brand. And he's the one who said, space communicates. And that was very profound to me, stuck with me. And then also I met through him Andy Clemmer, who runs Heritage Group, sat next to him at his wedding, and that was it. He was able to help me, who I'd never built a house before, right? So I never built anything, but I was really very keen to see how the space could communicate, and then combine that with the social entrepreneurial idea to create a new kind of place.
You sat next to him at his wedding?
At Ron Pompei's wedding, yes.
Oh, okay.
It was Andy Clemmer, sat next to him. It was just one of those fortuitous things.
Okay.
And yes, that was it. Andy Clemmer had built, his first building where he represented the owners was the Guggenheim Bilbao, and he took a chance on this idea to create Grace Farms, this aspirational idea, and we've been very, very simpatico in terms of how to create this space, because he leads with a program. And so we took that business philosophy and applied it to architecture.
When did you start thinking about buying property in New Canaan for Grace Farms?
Grace Farms used to be Winsome Farms, and it was one of these last large parcels in New Canaan, and it's been in private hands for hundreds of years. It wasn't for sale, and knowing that it was going to be broken up into 10 large parcels, it was just a hope that we could purchase the land. And when we submitted a offer, it took a while for the owners to sell, and it was really based on the purpose of what we're going to create as well. So it took a bit of time. Let's see, was it 2007 when we were able to ascertain the land?
And your initial vision for this was a church, right?
No. So that's the misnomer.
Okay.
It was never meant to be a church, but the idea germinated from the space communicates idea, right? So what can space do to advance good in the world? So I thought of this like being nature, arts, justice, community, and faith. And faith is one of those, but not within the context of really where we all are thinking about faith and meaning. There was a church that's part of like the initial filings for this space. We knew that the church, Grace Community Church, would need a space and would use it. So that was where the initial filings came through in that way. And in 2009, Grace Farms Foundation was formed officially, and the land was donated to Grace Farms Foundation. So that's where that routing then took off.
Now, how did the town and the neighbors receive this idea initially?
Well, the town has been very supportive, and people in town have been supportive. The surprise, I guess, when you purchase the land is you don't know who necessarily the neighbors are. We have some wonderful neighbors, and we also have a number of neighbors that are lawyers.
I guess they would not fall into the wonderful category.
And that's all I'm going to say. No.
Okay.
That was a surprise.
Okay.
That was a surprise. No, and, so I don't know, is 15 years of litigation too long? I don't know.
Oh, wow.
The initial part of this, it was pretty well received as far as I can tell by just about everybody.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then you announced that this very famous firm, Sana,
Mm-hmm.
Okay, from Japan, who won the Pritzker Prize. I guess my first question was Bjarke Ingels?
Oh, you and your Bjarke Ingels, yes.
Was Bjarke Ingels too busy to do this for you?
Oh, I'm so sorry to tell you, George, he wasn't even on the short list.
Oh.
So, must have been too early.
So tell us about these architects and why you chose them for the building, and then we're going to talk about the building.
So what we were creating is a new kind of public space, right, that was intended to be open and porous. The architecture would be embedded into nature, and we particularly wanted to break down barriers between people and sectors, be able to have a place that would invite pause and reflection. We're very busy, to be able to start to encourage engagement in those 5 initiatives: nature, arts, justice, community, and faith. And then also, in order to tackle and address modern-day slavery and gender-based violence, we wanted to create a hopeful space as well. And so this idea is the idea of not being tethered to any particular notion of other kinds of spaces. So the fact that we had Bill Lacey, so he was the former executive director of the Pritzker Prize. And
okay.
And he was able to put forward a number of firms, and Sana being one of them. We narrowed down our number. We didn't have a competition because we would never have the opportunity to really be able to articulate on paper without conversation of how we wanted to create this space. It needed to be an iterative process with the architect. And I also wanted the architects to really embody a lot of the aspirations we have. So I think that's where Sana came in. If you've seen how they work within their studio, it's very community-oriented. I mean, they have a community atmosphere. There's less hierarchy. They study, and they don't assume and jump to conclusions. And this iterative process is, when you were on site, did you see the 2 larger photographs that were from Thomas Dumond? It illustrated the iterative process itself. Just designing the river building, we had umpteen iterations of the river building itself to determine whether we could actualize our vision. We ended up thankfully selecting them, and they were able to imbue those values into space in an extraordinary way.
And this building is 5 different sections, but in a way it's all one long extended building that curves down this beautiful hillside.
Yes. So we never asked for a river building, per se. The river building was the solution to the 35-page program that included all of our aspirations and utilitarian goals. so that the 5 glass enclosed volumes create the porosity and does invite you into the nature. I wanted nature to be foregrounded and the building to be this generative platform per se, and this way to also connect people in a way that you could have an individual experience, a collective experience, that you would be in proximity to people and new ideas, your curiosity would be piqued. And then I hope you felt that there was an ambulatory experience too.
Oh, absolutely, sure.
So that's part of it, like you're meant to move, right? So you're also invited in. So the glass, the transparency not only connects you into the landscape, but it also connects you to people along the river. You can see people from the top of the river building almost really through to the court at the lower elevated points. So the elevation changes too also create this very unusual kind of opportunity to create new perspectives.
Unless you're driving or on your Peloton, folks, you might want to start Googling Grace Farms in New Canaan, Connecticut, so you can get an idea of what we're talking about as we go along. Because what I want to ask Sharon next is to describe the 5 major sections of the river building.
So as you come into the 80-acre site, there's a long drive, and so you do not experience the river building until you're at the entry point of the barns, which are these 2 equestrian barns, and still has a welcome and like open arms into the space, because the original 8-shaped barn, the middle section was removed and it creates a lower profile. And then you see the river in the distance through a plaza of apple and pear trees. And then as you approach the river, there's no one entry. So there's no front door, and that's intentional, because the idea is for everyone to freely discover and be invited to any of the spaces. So you can start at many different spots. From the top of the river, there's about a 45-foot elevation change, and there's a curvilinear shape that is connected by this undulating brushed aluminum roof, and under the canopy on the underside is Douglas fir, and it is creates that sense of warmth in that way. At the top, there is a larger amphitheater that's grounded, again, to the earth. So what's so interesting about it is that the design of this space is meant to be part of the landscape and also create a means to be in community with each other without the least amount of hierarchy you can have, too, because the height of the stage is about half the height of a Broadway stage, and there are no stairs either, so you really become part of the landscape. And the chairs were made cut to form, and then it's 360 degrees of glass. So that's at the apex of the river building. That space is used for many things. So we've had everything from a UN university convening with multi-sectors to Carrie Mae Weems, who's there just before the pandemic with her past tense, Alvin Ailey, and like just all these other artists, to panels, and just you can use that space many different ways. And then you have the next volume is the library, and the library is a living, breathing space with a fireplace and a small selection of volumes that are representative of our 5 initiatives and the work that we're doing. There's another curvilinear space, and also in between each of the curves is a communal space, per se. So you can imagine that as well. They form with the canopy of the roof. Then the next volume would be the commons, where you have a couple hundred people can fit. We have 18-foot-long tables, and all the tables on site were made from wood that was felled on site. So when you were in the commons, did you notice the living room space, too, on one of the edges where we have a Teresita Fernandez piece? I
don't think I got to see that part.
So Teresita has a very large permanent artworks, too, that are reflective of the vision, and that one's called Double Glass River. But the thing about the commons area is that you're seated, there's no tables for 2, so you're seated together. The idea of creating a diverse and welcoming community and having conversations with people you might not know is part of that idea. And then we have our community garden, too, that services all that food there. You have lunch, grilled cheese, pretty good. It's really
grilled cheese, excellent, so noted.
Oh, yeah. And then the next volume is the pavilion where we serve tea. And so that's an opportunity to have a conversation. It's a smaller volume. The height of that space is lower and creates a more intimate space. And then the last volume is the court, where it's subterranean.
Basketball court, right?
Right, there's still a rim of glass around, so you can see right through it at the top edge.
Now, is there a company basketball team? Are you like the Fighting Modernists?
I did play high school basketball, so I should have been thinking about that.
Yeah.
But no,
game.
What's fun about the court is that there's rarely a place for open court time, but in our court, we do provide that time. So we have kids and young adults to families that encourages field pickup games, and it is pretty extraordinary to see.
Now, I don't know if you've been told this or not before, Sharon, but looking at this for the first time, I had to say this would make an excellent lair for a global arch-villain like Blofeld from James Bond. He would be masquerading as one of these, very spiritual organizations with these buildings folding into but beneath it is a giant missile silo. Do you have a missile silo, Sharon?
Oh, wow. There's all sorts of things that have been conjured up, but no, that's not that.
Well, that's better than who told you.
Exactly. But you know what? There's other aspirations. People want to snowboard off the roof. I will say I love the roof.
Yes, the roof is beautiful.
I'd like to be on it. That's like one of my, early on during construction and so forth, it was a pretty phenomenal perch. But that's it, not below deck, above.
Okay. Well, down in Sydney, Australia, over the last 20 years or so, they're now taking people up on the bridge. You can strap yourself into the cables and walk across. I think Oprah did that when she took that big group to Sydney.
Haven't you done that?
I have not done that myself.
My stepdaughter has done it.
Yeah.
I did that probably, it had to be 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not
20
cheap.
years ago. Oh, no.
but you do get a picture.
Yes, you do.
Of course.
You do.
Now, how long did this complex take to build, and when did you open?
It took 8 years, which is longer than I would have expected. We opened in 2015. And you hope for this to be a generative platform where we could advance good, where space would become a real verb and be this catalyst. And when people activate it, because before it's activated, it's just a building. And the good news is we have seen so many important, new generative outcomes happening, and quite a bit even over the last year.
Now, at some point, some of the neighbors, those attorneys, and the town planning and zoning board turned on you. What happened?
Oh, you know what, though? It's really more, it's not the town. The town has really been, and so many people so supportive. And I said some of those neighbors. So it really is, it's always just a few. And over time, it's less. It's over 15 years now, there's less than there was before. And, everybody has different motives and different ways of thinking. Thankfully, though, it's always just a very few. There's a whole new meaning to carrying on.
Well, from reading the accounts and going through some laborious planning and zoning meeting minutes, it seems that most of the resistance is what people feel could happen on the site rather than what you're actually doing. This kind of reception, oddly, is not particularly new in New Canaan. For a town known around the world for exceptional architecture, no good deed often goes unpunished.
I hear that.
The whole history going back in the 50s of these modernist houses by Philip Johnson and others going up was kind of roundly criticized by the citizens there. They didn't know what they have, even though now they seem to appreciate it as a genre. For example, the celebrated Glass House by Philip Johnson, which is now run by the National Trust, is pretty much hamstrung by the town from having more than one public event a year on 49 acres of grounds. So, Sharon, I want to be the first to ask, could you please buy the Glass House and extend your empire?
Oh, they're doing much better. Greg Stages over there and team. I think they've just received a P&Z, hooray. They think they've got another or larger event.
Good.
I think good things are happening over there, I think.
Good.
Mm-hmm. The great news is that between the Glass House, Noyes 2, Grace Farms, and also the New Canaan Library that is going through P&Z to have their new space. So we're all very supportive of each other, too.
Now, what inspired the Design for Freedom working group you founded with the late and wonderful Bill Menking?
He is wonderful. What happened is that there's been this significant undertaking to not only to create a space, investment in architecture, but also investment in justice to end modern-day slavery. And they actually came together 2 years after we opened in the way that it illuminated an industry that's getting a labor material transparency pass. So what happened is that it's on our second anniversary when Bill Menking came to Grace Farms. He came for our anniversary, and I was at that time on a national jury evaluating projects that were rightly weighted primarily on sustainability measures and not yet for social sustainability, and particularly not for the labor inputs. So that what happened is that it became clear that the industry at that time, that yes, there's been no attention to forced labor in the building material supply chains like there has been in the other sectors. Like first there's been food, right? Food and then clothing. And now I am proposing that we need to turn our attention to shelter, to the building material supply chain. The movement starts from within. It needs to start from those that are part of the industry. So we started to bring together the full ecosystem of the built environment, which is important, so we could apply pressure and understanding from many different angles, so not just from the architectural lens or design team and engineers, but the construction managers, the universities, media, which he was concurring, of course. And it was initialized late 2017, and we started in earnest the following year. And that's where we started to really mobilize the construction industry, the ecosystem, to start to come together. And so now we have 60 or more industry experts and practitioners, all part of the working group.
Well, modern-day slavery strikes me almost as a contradiction in terms. I didn't know that it could be. Where is it happening in the construction supply chain? In America?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes. So all buildings, including Grace Farms around the globe, are built with materials that have a high risk of forced and child labor. So not one modern building can be certified now without forced labor, and it's thousands of materials. So this is what we're trying to address with Design for Freedom. And had I been aware of this issue at the beginning of Grace Farms, I would have approached the project differently. Once I learned, I tasked our team with researching the provenance of the materials in our curvilinear roof. And the good news is that Zahner, was keen to examine our supply chain. It's end-to-end supply chain. So starting from where the materials are extracted, smelted, manufactured, produced, transferred, and then ultimately put into the building. So what you learn is that you can only go so far without asking the questions at the beginning, at the onset of a project.
I understand the idea here that you're working on, but what are some of the most common products, and where are they coming from that have a slave-based labor force?
There's 12 materials. So we issued a 100-page report, Design for Freedom report, that's on designforfreedom.org. They comprise both of raw and composites. Some of the most ubiquitous materials are timber, steel, glass, rubber, even some of the specialized materials now that you think of that are sustainable are actually fraught. Polycrystalline silicone that goes into your solar panels, there's been some attention to that. 80% of that global supply chain of polycrystalline silicone comes from China. And then 45% of that is in the Uyghur region. So,
okay.
Yes, only 5% of the global supply comes from U.S.-owned companies. So there's many materials, bricks, and sometimes you might say, well, most of the timber, isn't it sourced here in the United States? Well, no, it isn't. We're the second largest importer of wood, and 38% of the global wood is used in construction. So you need to ask, where are your materials coming from? Where's my timber coming from? And you could even be on this mission to be innovative, and rightly so, like to have the sustainable components of mass timber, and yet you still need to know where that timber is coming from. And what's important to note about all of this is that unlike the Green Build movement, this movement, Design for Freedom, has a legal component. It's not just a hope that we can all do this as a community, but it's also illegal to bring in any materials into the United States that are disallowed, that don't allow forced labor or modern-day slavery. But the United States is unique in that we have a TFTA law, the Trade Facilitation and Enforcement Act, which does not allow any products into the United States to be imported with forced labor in any part of your supply chain. So you have to be able to prove your cargo shipment. When it comes in with that steel or other structural components, you still need to know the provenance of it and to be able to document that it was made without forced labor. And that's really not happening at this point. This loophole in the law was just adjusted in the last 2 years, so you're going to start seeing more WROs issued, withholding release orders, and that's part of the stick that will help. We still just hope people will know, okay, once you know, you can't unknow this, that there is a high probability of slave labor in our material supply chains, but there's also a legal and a reputational risk too.
This report, which you said was called Design for Freedom, was called by AIA New York as essential reading for everyone involved in the design and construction industry. It really sounds like that's something that architects and engineers and planners and clients should get a hold of.
Oh, absolutely. And it also includes a perspective from many of the industry leaders as well as data and analysis. And there's also just affirmation, too, from leaders like Chris Sharples at Shop and Phil Bernstein at Yale and Claire Weitz and Hayes Slade. And there's many other architects and others in the field that are on board and using their wherewithal to propel the movement. And even now we're starting pilot projects, which is incredible. So this is all happening in short order. It's been a very strong uptick to activate and start to really pragmatically address it.
Now, Sharon, as you open back up from the pandemic, what's next for Grace Farms?
So we are opening September 1st. And while we've been closed, we've actually been filling a significant gap in terms of PPE and food relief. We converted Grace Farms into a humanitarian distribution center and used our expertise on supply chains to also bring in what was really very, very difficult to get, which was the PPE. So now we've donated, procured, brought in 2 million PPE, including 500,000 N95s. And we've been continuing to serve food from our garden, these healthy meals, to our community. So now we're going to continue that. That's going to be our norm, is to really integrate the concept of food sovereignty and equity. And we're going to offer shared meals when we reopen. So the same meal, you're going to have fantastic meals, but on Tuesday, you'll all share in a meal that we're going to now share also in our communities. We can still continue to do that one day a week. Isn't that pretty incredible?
That's pretty cool. I can't wait to get back up there.
Yeah, you're busy.
Yeah.
I know. And also Mass Design is going to partner on exhibitions that will open up at Grace Farms and all sorts of things. They'll describe the work that we've done, the work that we'll be doing, and then we'll start on Design for Freedom exhibits that'll probably last over many years. And also, Allison Schatz we're going to do a new installation on time with the incredible Allison Schatz.
Well, I just want a jersey from the Fighting Modernists.
I am a fighter. I have to say that. So I'll join you on the Fighting Modernists.
Sharon, thank you so much for joining us.
I so appreciate it, and I can't wait to have you back and see you in person.
With us today, from that land up above, our favorite jazz country, Canada, is singer-songwriter Lily Frost. Studying piano, ballet, tap, modern, and jazz dance at the Royal Conservatory of Music in Toronto, she's been performing for years solo and with groups like Les Minstrels, The Sheiks, and The Colorifics. Her songs have graced TV shows, such as Being Erica, Grey's Anatomy, Crazy Beautiful, Workin' Moms, Charmed, Felicity, and Stargate SG-1. Welcome, Lily.
Thank you very much, George. Glad to be here.
Starting out, did music hit you during those summers on Lake Huron, or was that earlier?
Good question. You know what? I would say that it hit me in a deeply profound way up at Lake Huron, because I had a cousin who would come from Calgary every year, and she was 3 years older, so she was like an older sister, and she brought amazing new stuff every year. So like Madness, The Specials one year, and then the Beastie Boys the next year. And we just listened under the stars at night, with the fire going. So it kind of penetrates deeply when you're in that environment, not surrounded by the chaos of a city. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
And then years later, that territory actually started inspiring songs to be written from me.
And how did you make the transition from campfires to performing for others?
The first time I went on stage was like an actual kind of rock and roll stage or, performance stage was in Montreal. I was studying music at university, and somebody discovered me leafing through sheet music at this place called Sheet Thrills, where you get vinyl and everything.
Yeah.
And he said, "Are you a singer?" And I said, "Well, I'm singing at the coffee house at Concordia." And he said, "Well, would you like to audition for my band?" And I thought he was kidding, because that was like basically my dream, is to sing in a band. And I just kind of ignored it. But then I bumped into him again a few weeks later, and he said, "What happened? I wanted you to audition for my band." And I thought, well, he never told me where to go or what song to sing or anything, and no details. And he said, "Well, okay, here's the place, here's the time, here's the song, I'll get you the sheet music and the tape, learn it, and come and audition." So I did. And it was amazing. It was like this portal opened, like it was a loft space, and everyone was kind of dressed like the Beatles in Montreal.
Like Stargate
really
SG-1. Yes, the time portal has
basically
opened.
So I did my audition, and they liked it, and they said, "Okay, your first gig is tomorrow night." And I was just, the anxiety, but the thrill and the adrenaline and everything all mixed together was ridiculously, like, mind-blowing for me. And it just kind of hooked me in, and I never, ever turned back.
Was that an original song, or was that a cover?
That was Bessie Smith's 1920s blues song, the St. Louis Blues.
Oh, wow, sure.
Yeah, that's what he asked me to learn. And I had never sung the blues before, and so I was frantically racing around my dormitory saying, "Does anyone know how to sing the blues?" And this one woman, Beth, she was like, "Yeah, you got to give it some power and get your whole body into it and kind of growl a
It
little
helps
bit."
to break up with your boyfriend or something like that.
Yeah.
That'll help you sing the
Yes,
blues.
absolutely.
Many of our musical guests tell us about some exotic experience living in Paris or London early in their careers, but you lived in Cairo. How was that?
Oh, gosh. Well, it was, as you can imagine, a completely different experience from what I was used to growing up in a small suburban kind of preppy waspy town. So all of a sudden, I was only 19, and I was singing on a ship on the Nile. And they said they wanted to hear Vegas-style songs, which is what I was sort of approved to do. But when I got there, they switched it a bit. They wanted more like feelings of love and the Whitney Houston song that was super popular back then, "I Will Always Love You," and that kind of stuff. And that's fine. So I just kind of switched the focus. The day-to-day was, what I could wear was restricted. Couldn't show any skin, even at night when I was performing. I had to cover up. I had to be careful out in public with my eyes, because my eyes are blue. I dyed my hair black. I befriended the host on the ship. His name was Hanny Shams, and he was a queer guy, and he was awesome, but that was undercover. And he was like, "I'll take care of you, honey. You just come with me, And he dyed my hair black, and he said, "Wear this little thing over your face, and everyone will leave you alone. So just kind of stay under the radar," because I was getting a lot of kind of harassment, The pyramids are incredible. The ruins, the cartouches, just going way deep down into the earth and seeing these beautiful vegetable engravings using vegetable dyes that are still preserved. It's pretty mind-blowing civilization way back when.
Were you on a cruise ship that had passengers like overnight, or did they just go out for a dinner cruise?
So it was actually a stationary, like a floating restaurant establishment.
Okay, like a nightclub, supper club kind of thing.
Exactly, but on water, because I think they got like a tax break
Oh, my goodness.
I learned to barter when I was there. That's a big part of the culture. Like whatever you can do to save a buck. It's like sport,
Right.
for them.
This next song was written for the play Whoopee almost 100 years ago by Donaldson and Kahn. Ruth Etting, who history has sadly forgotten, was such a hit she sang it in another play, Simple Simon, the next year in about 1930. Bing Crosby covered it because he covered everything that everyone else did. But the song was a hit for the 1955 movie about Ruth Etting's life, starring Doris Day. From Sammy Davis Jr., Lena Horne, Nina Simone, Fats Waller, Billie Holiday, Ella Fitzgerald, Miles Davis, Sarah Vaughan, and past podcast guest Jane Monheit, all roads lead us to Lily with Love Me or Leave Me.
Let me be lonely. You won't believe me that I love you only. I'd rather be lonely than happy with somebody new. You might find the nighttime the right time for kissing, but nighttime is my time for reminiscing, regretting instead of forgetting with somebody new. There'll be no one unless that someone is you. I intend to be independently blue. I want your love, but I don't want to borrow. To have it today and to give back tomorrow. Your love is my love, there's no love for nobody else. Somebody else. You might find the night time the right time for kissing. Night time is my time for reminiscing, reflecting instead of forgetting with somebody else. There'll be no one unless that someone is you. I intend to be independently blue. I want your love, but I don't want to borrow. To have it today and to give it back tomorrow. Your love is my love, there's no love for nobody else. Your love is my love, there's no love for nobody else.
I can imagine you singing that on a boat in Egypt.
Yeah. Oh, or more like, I will always love you.
Oh, yeah.
Every time the boss disappeared, the pianist and I would break into jazz. So that was our rebellion.
Okay.
And how often did the boss disappear?
Every once in a while.
Mm.
I don't know where he went.
Would go off the boat somewhere.
I almost got sucked into a harem at one point. That was a story in itself.
Well, now you have to tell us that story, Lily. Come on.
It's not safe. So quite a few gentlemen would come and hear me sing and bring gifts or offer things, and everything from, camels to purchase me, to jewelry, to gold watches, oh my God, perfume, all these things. And in our culture, it's not quite such an equivalent exchange as to their way of thinking. It's not like, I'm going to give you this one thing and now you have to kiss me. And then I'm going to give you this bigger thing and now you have to, whatever, But,
I hesitate to wonder what a camel is worth.
Yeah, right.
Exactly. So there was one man, he was quite elegant and he would come with his assistant, and he said that he had a whole bunch of hotels across Europe, and he loved my singing, and he wanted to offer me a job singing in his hotels. And I thought that that would be, an interesting prospect to discuss. And we booked a lunchtime meeting with my piano player. But my piano player at the last minute canceled, and it was just me. Ooh. And he was there with his assistant, and it was a public place and everything, but he was like offering me double gin and tonics. Uh-huh. And at the end of the meal, which was fine and everything, there was no coffee, and I love coffee. And he said, no problem, we'll just go back to my place for coffee. And within seconds, there was a limo picking us up. It was me, his assistant, and this other woman who was his tennis partner. So they swept us away. Silly, I shouldn't have gone, obviously. And it was the penthouse of this beautiful apartment with jade elephants and silver everywhere. And they brought out, tons of cookies and teas and coffees and cream and everything. But then his story changed. So he was like, you know what? I actually don't have any hotels, but you can have an apartment all to yourself in Paris, and I'll buy you anything you want, and you will have your own chauffeur and blah, blah, blah. And I was 19. I started bawling my eyes out. And then he started kissing me, and then it got weird. I luckily got away.
It was weird then? I think it was pretty weird before that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Auditioning to be a kept woman.
Exactly.
Yikes.
But luckily I got away. But he kept sending gifts to the piano bar that I was singing at, over the course of the next few months that I was working there. And the owner told me, just refuse everything. No, thank you. Thank you very much. No, thank you. And the gifts got more expensive, and it was so tempting and also terrifying at the same time.
Yes, you were very lucky to get out of there.
I know, because they could have taken my passport, supposedly. Legally, they can do that, and then they can do what they want with you, basically. Yeah, I know I was lucky. I'm tall and semi-strong. I look strong, anyway.
That's what matters.
Yes.
Exactly.
So you could take him out.
Impression. Yep. Yeah.
Lily, this next song is from your most recent album. Tell us about that album, Retro Moderne.
So Retro Moderne is an album that I funded myself. Basically, went down to New York, worked with my first choice producer, and I really felt solid about it. Up until then, I had been with record companies, and there was always an element of me trying to wow them or get their approval. So this time, it wasn't about any of that. It was just completely focused on the best songs I'd ever written. I felt it was very strong. The criticisms that it gets are that it's too stylized, and there's something about that I am taking into account for my next album going forward, which is like a realness or sincerity, whereas that Retro Moderne is it's like a movie, like I'm kind of dramatizing scenarios. Each one is a different little entity into itself, and it's got a lot of ear candy, and it's really fun, and it's very well produced. I loved working with Gus Van Gogh. Which song are you playing, Dud?
Yes.
Dud.
Are you playing Dud? Yeah, Dud was written with Chad Horton out in Vancouver, which, as you know, is like, I'm in Toronto, which is like New York. Vancouver's like California. So
right.
It's a hike. But I made the trip just to work with him on songwriting, although he's become a car salesman now. And I just kind of knew that we had the magic. So we wrote Dead together at that juncture about a relationship I was having with a man and it was just going nowhere.
Hence the title.
Yeah, like online dating for 5 years, and it just wasn't working, wasn't revving up. Anyway, so I told the story to Chad, and Chad's like, loaded my life weapon with you, can't hit my target with you in my chamber. You're a dud. And I'm like screaming, like, oh my God, okay.
Yeah.
That's all I need.
Let's hear it.
Loading my life weapon with you.
if you had some camels,
Yeah.
I might be willing to reevaluate. That's a great song.
Exactly.
It's a cathartic song, it sounds like.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It is mean, though. I'm sorry about that. No offense.
Lily, where can people hear your music and reach out to you? Do you have a website?
I have a website, lilyfrost.com.
Easy.
I am on Facebook, Lily Frost Music on Facebook. Instagram, it's lilyfrostcom. Spotify, iTunes. I have 15 albums out, and they're all over the place musically, excluding heavy metal and hip hop.
But I'm sure that's coming down the line at some future point.
Yeah, why not, right?
If I pay you enough camels, I can probably get it.
No, I refused the camels.
Okay.
And luckily I had a spokesperson who spoke Arabic, and he was furious when this man made the camel offer.
Lily, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening. U.S. Modernist Radio is underwritten by Wendy Robineau and Don Beskin, and by Modernist Realtor Angela Roll. Okay, Tom, close us out.
Visit usmodernist.org's massive archives to listen to past shows, discover documentation of 8,000 significant modernist houses, and access 3.2 million pages of classic 20th century architecture magazines. U.S. Modernist Radio is produced by Soundtracks Recording Studios in Raleigh, North Carolina. Our theme song is performed by George Smart and Robinson Earl. Rogue archivist Carrie Cesarino researches guests while rolling in the deep with Adele. U.S. Modernist Radio is a production of Modernist Archive Incorporated, a nonprofit educational archive for the documentation, preservation, and promotion of modernist residential design. I'm Tom Guild. George and I will be back soon with another No Good Deed Goes Unpunished edition of U.S. Modernist Radio.